What's the Zion in Zionism? Is that from the movie The Matrix?
We're not talking the Torah tonight. Let's not.
I'm just asking a question because, what is the Zionism, with regards to a candidate? It's just a question I'm asking.
You know what it is. You know what it is. Anyways,
is that like a Jewish Israel or a majority Jewish Israel? Is that what it really means? Because it's it's a little spiritual. It's in the books. I'm just saying it's sacred writing.
Yeah,
it's text. It's at the shores of Babylon.
It's a Jewish
Zion.
It's a Jewish state. That's what it is. That's what it means. A Jewish state.
But what does a Canadian politician have to do with the Jewish state? Nothing. It's all just rhetoric.
Edmund, stop being a douche. Go with the title.
Yeah, sorry, comedian. I'm trying, but All right, so I'm gonna get in front of the computer here, so we'll get some more results. The votes are starting to come in. Again, we're looking at, I think it's 172 is the magic number to get to the majority government.
Your thoughts, I think these are very well thought out ideas. So I think own it. So,
and that's I think you were talking more about the moral.
Let's just strip back.
I think focus the conversation as well.
Wow.
So quite a long time for Erasmus. And so
that's suave.
Big and powerful falls.
Yeah, but I'm gonna bring it up.
And I think that's going on here. And then even once he recovers, it's not as low that
come to my place.
It's not the same as it's old.
Visiting Rome had very
we'll
different
do the coach house.
Western Rome, but I mean, I've just never seen convincing evidence that the amount of trade and literacy and so forth in the Muslim world in the year 1450 was significantly different from 1250 or 1150.
When was the Mughals? When was that?
1200s or 1100s. I think it was later. Their peak, dominating Western India, I think that was a bit later, like 1500s.
Mongols. Sorry, I thought you said Mongols.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think 1200 still about 1700s, I think, when the British fully took over.
Because that was kind of a golden age in India. It was pretty good there. So,
well, I mean, yes, I think in the 1600s, the East India Trading Company had presence, but very weak, subtle presence in India, and the Crown sent a message to whoever who was managing the East India Trading Company and told them, look, can we add India to our colonial assets? And the guy's like, no, the standing army is 4 million people. They I think they had 2/3 of the world's GDP at the time, so India was very powerful and very strong during the reign of Aurangzeb specifically. But he was so powerful and such a micromanager that when he died, just everything kind of collapsed. It took about 100 years for the British to fully take control. But India, in terms of wealth, in terms of strength, in terms of economy, in terms of I don't know about scientific innovation, but they were very powerful up until the late 1600s.
Bro, India is not a joke, man. India is heavy. Medieval India was crazy. If you go look up all those temples, the architecture, my God. There's this one temple in Sri Lanka. It's built on top of a mountain, and we don't even know how they were able to get up. There's some weird stuff going on in India, bro. I'm telling you, man. That's okay. If you know me,
I don't think
Dan always says that, but man,
I don't think Sri Lankans are going to be happy with you calling them Indians.
Well, I mean, okay, it was during the time, I think it was during the Gupta period, so it was the same sort of empire. But there's the Kailasa temple in India, and then there's that temple in Sri Lanka, that's Shugura, I don't know how to say this, Sigara. Just type in SUG temple Sri Lanka. it's like on a mountain, bro. And there's no indication. How were they able to climb up? I'm telling you, bro. There's more temple structures. I think India has the most medieval temples in the world.
Are you trying to suggest aliens or what's happening?
No, I'm just suggesting that the technology that they had to build that temple, the one in Sri Lanka,
Oh yeah, I'm looking at it now. Yeah, that's very impressive.
Bro, you go watch the documentaries and see the videos, bro. It's. I almost fell off my chair watching that thing. Because how do you climb up that mountain? Like, there's no ladder that you can use to. And how do you bring the stones down? Unless they had like some kind of flying device or something. It's ridiculous.
Aliens, man, I'm telling you.
It's ridiculous. But it just the world was a big place. The medieval times was a big place. And like if you look at the rise and fall of civilizations, sometimes it's not so much that like they did something wrong for their golden age to collapse, but maybe they just when you're looking at something for a long time and you just get too familiar with it, and then somebody else would just come on and build upon what you started. And I think that's what led to the Renaissances in Europe. By the time you come to the 1500s, they already had the manuscripts from the Arabs, and they had manuscripts from the Greeks and the Romans, and people were trading, and they just built upon what these people were doing, and they took it to another level. It's like a progression almost. That's what I think happened. And then the Islamic sort of golden age you had to sort of take a bypass, go into the shadows, and then you start seeing the rise of the so-called Enlightenment, and then you have all these different thinkers in Europe.
Yeah, but that's the thing. That's why I have a problem with this idea of a golden age, because when we say golden age, we mean a specific dynasty, a limited geographical location, and with relation to a specific observer as well. But like, for example, the Safavids, which came up at about the 1500s, the third leader, Shah Abbas, again, kind of left all the sectarian stuff, and he started, first of all, trading with Europe, but also like pushing into culture and science and innovation stuff in Iran around that time as well. So like, that's nothing to do with the Abbasids. And the same the example that I mentioned of the Mughals. Like, it's different periods, different dynasties, and different times. And even though they all shared like an Islamic ethos, even though some of them were Shia, some of them were Sunnis, like that's why there is no such thing as a caliphate. It was just different dynasties that reached their peak at different times and then kind of collapsed for whatever reason.
Oh, I wanted to say something also about the printing press, because the in Baghdad, in the Abbasid, the Al-Hikmah Al-Bayt, I was reading a book that said that they basically learned how to make paper from a family called the Barmakid family. It was like some family in Asia.
Yeah.
And so they learned how to make paper from there. So then by the time you get to the printing press now, it's almost like, I'm sure somebody must have realized, okay, well, if we can make paper, I don't know how they did it. Surely now we can be able to start printing and mass producing, and then you had newspapers and so on and so forth. So that's just one more thing I wanted to mention before. But if you know about the Barmakids, if you're laughing, that means you know a lot about Islamic history.
So
conspiracy surrounding those guys.
So the way they got paper was during one of their campaigns. They arrested some Chinese soldiers or something, or someone from China, and they had paper with them. And like the Abbasids were like, we want this, and so they made them train like local Abbasids how to make paper, and that's how paper came into the Abbasid Empire. But back to the Barmakids. So basically, when the Abbasid Empire came to power, it was initially a politically Shiite revolution. I don't know how deep to get into this, because I don't want to bore you guys. But basically, that's why the Abbasid Empire came from Iran. And so the first 2 or 3 leaders of the Abbasid Empire, which is Abu Ja'far al-Mansur and Abu al-Abbas al-Saffah, anyways, 2 people, they settled in Iran before moving on to Iraq. And while they settled in Iran, they made really close connections with this family called the Barmaki family. And they became their confidants. And so when Abu Ja'far passed away, and his son Harun, was like basically he's synonymous with the Golden Age.
Yes, Harun
he was Harun Rashid, correct? Yeah. So when Harun Sheikh came to power, he was very young. I think he was like 17 or 19 or something, so like really, really young. And so the Barmakis took over as kind of like caretakers. And until he became in his like late 20s, he was fine with it because he didn't notice a difference. Like he was so wealthy, but then eventually it reached a level where they were actually more in control of the state than he was. They brought like a 500,000 soldier contingent from Iran and settled them in Iraq, in Baghdad. So that basically he had no power. And so he spent, like once he figured it out, he spent 5 years trying to get as many of the like soldiers and generals and stuff under his trust and control as he could, who were like all Arabs, because again there was like a very ethnic or like a Persian versus Arab thing happening at the time. And eventually overnight he, like Harun Rashid, carried out a coup. Even though he was in charge, he carried out a coup against all the Barmakis. He killed them all. He had them like cut up into like, beheaded and stuff, and stuck on the streets. The Risafa Bridge, which is one of the major bridges in Iraq, to kind of affirm his rule and to tell people like the Barmaki reign is over and it's in my hand now. So that's why when he said Barmaki, they're like, oh yeah, I know that story.
Yeah.
It's such a fucking like trip, man. Like everything you read a little bit of it, and it just like completely opens a new world.
Yeah, and then you get to Caliph Mahmoud, was his son. It's the same. So like when you look at the transition of these empires, you also see a lot of infighting. There's a lot of things that contribute to
100%.
the rise and fall of golden ages. And then you add in the Crusades with the Europeans and the wars that were going on between the Franks and the Saracens and the so-called blackamoors, and then you had the Ummah. Like all these different things were going on at that time period. So, I'm just adding on to what you're saying, but it's very interesting.
Incredibly. Like even Ma'mun, for example, Ma'mun was his father's choice. So Harun Rashid, before he died, he wanted Ma'mun to be in power. But, she wanted Al-Amin to be in power. But the other son, Al-Ma'mun, his mom was very keen on him coming into power. And because he was half Persian, eventually he became the one who was the Khalifa. And so that led to a whole list of clusterfucks, which again, like it may be beyond the scope of this room. But yeah, look, definitely, all of these things, I guess, coming together, like the ethnic element, the sectarian element, the political element, the geographic element, all of these things like come together, and then just incredible things happen. So it becomes difficult to say with any certainty that like the majority reason for this decline or for this increase or for this whatever is that factor, because there's always so many factors at play.
Yeah. And if you come to today, obviously now these empires are gone and we have nation states and so on and so forth. But it's like almost like we're beginning to see the rise of a new, I don't want to say a new golden age, but like a new age is coming in. Have any of you read Sam Huntington's Clash of Civilizations? This book that he wrote in 19.
I know the ideas.
The idea is that the world is moving into a polarized time where little nation states are going to become almost irrelevant, and it's going to be about building civilizational blocks. And he wrote this book in the 1990s. He predicted a lot of the things that are happening right now, like the wars in the Middle East and so on and so forth, the rise of the Islamic population, the decline of the European birth rates and stuff like that. A very controversial book he wrote in the 1990s. And what he was saying is that basically you have Western civilization, and then you've got the so-called Islamic civilization, and you've got the Eastern communist sort of civilizations. Like all these different civilizational blocks are emerging on the planet Earth, and that's like it's a sign of like advancement, that we're no longer in these little tribal ethno-states, but now we're building empires based on civilizational. And civilizations are usually based on principles, right? So like what's Western civilization built on? You guys can tell me. There's certain values, right? There's certain heritage, there's certain traditions.
I don't know, like I don't subscribe to books written in the 90s as blueprints for what's happening at the moment. I don't know what's happening at the moment. It's so violent and so unlike everything we've seen in the last 100 years. I can't claim to know what's going to happen.
That book was very accurate, my friend. I'm telling you, it's happening right now. I mean, you can see the. And what's happening in the West, and you guys would tell me you live in the West, is you're beginning to see the West is trying to redefine itself, and then you have this whole left-wing, right-wing dichotomy, and it's like a return to traditionalism and Judeo-Christian values, or we need to embrace a more pluralistic society with secularism and all the things that come with that. So like the geopolitical landscape is a civilization. It's a civilizational discourse. Like you can see now people warming up to Russia and China because of certain things in the media, and people warming up to communism and socialism. But it's really more of a civilization. It's a civilizational conversation. And then now you've got the whole Islamic thing. You've got people like Andrew Tate converting to Islam, and Islam has become very popular.
Andrew Tate is a grifter.
Yeah,
Andrew Tate is a grifter. Like he
regardless
jumped
of
onto.
what he is, he's very influential, right? Especially among young people. It's politics. It's geopolitics. Maybe he was paid to convert to Islam. I don't know.
Yeah, he's definitely paid to become Muslim. Like, I don't think anyone paid him. I think he just saw a lot of opportunity in, easy to influence young brown men. And he's like, okay, but if I'm Muslim, I'll just get a lot of people to join my Tate University, or whatever the fuck it's called. But like, look, I don't think Islam is currently a civilizational force. Like, I think there's always a potential, and it's like, as a deconstructionist Islamist, I definitely think it has a role. But currently, I don't think it has anything. Like most countries now, like whether it's, for example, Iran is under, Russian or let's say like a Russian circle of influence, and like the Gulf countries and Iraq and stuff are under this like American Zionist, not Iraq, actually Iraq is it, but like the Gulf, for example, and Egypt and Tunisia and Morocco are under the American/Zionist circle of influence. So a lot of these leaders are not really Muslim leaders. They're just like paid, criminals for these forces. And there is no wave, there is no movement. Like really the most promising, you could say, movement was the Muslim Brotherhood, but that's getting shut down and banned in most countries now. So like that's really impacted how Muslims think of themselves as a civilizational force, because there's no one to carry it. The principles are all like impractical or outdated or kind of very heavily influenced by 1950s, 1960s left-right discourse. So like we need new leaders, we need new thinkers. I don't know how that's going to happen.
That's why the Mahdi is here, Nasser.
Mahdi, yeah, I subscribe to eschatological theories. So yeah.
Sam knows him. Sam, you know the Mahdi, right? He's your friend.
Yeah. Mark. Which one? The new one?
Yeah, the new one.
What have you heard about the new Mahdi, Mark?
What's his name? Al-Qaim? That guy? The guy's got a TikTok account?
There's a new Mahdi.
I Google his manifest. He just seems like a random crazy person.
The guy with the beanie, right? He's always with a beanie.
Yes. The beanie.
Yeah, I love that guy. He's so good. I love his interviews. He's just like so wildly crazy. Like his claims are so ambitious. Like, well done to you for putting yourself out there.
Yeah, he claims to have written some document, some hadith or something, where Muhammad wrote his name, that he would be the Mahdi or something like that.
So the interesting thing about this, Ben, is this Mahdi doesn't use Sunni eschatology. He uses Shia eschatology. So a lot of the stuff that he claims, no Sunnis heard it because it's prevalent in Shia eschatological writings. And so, like, he uses terms that I've never recognized before. He mentions, like you said, the hadith and stuff, but, like, none of it we know. And so, I have no way of verifying whether or not, like, it's completely bullshit or not. But I'm just really enjoying the ride. Like, just the way that he takes himself so seriously. Oh, so good.
It's fascinating to study, man. This is what they call the end times, right? The Abrahamic believers. This is what you guys believe, right?
I don't. Look, I think the end times, like I said, 100% fascinating. But like the end times is an eschatological theory that there are signs for how the world ends, and when you see these signs, it means the world is ending soon. But like these signs have been coming up since the death of the prophet, right? So one of the first signs is when the prophet dies, then the end times will come. So I think like the world will end when it ends. I don't think we have any signal or anything that we can tell this is going to happen.
Okay,
So I think
we should hear the words of the Mahdi himself.
Is that every time one of the messengers were sent, the people belied him, mocked him, and rejected him. Jeremiah the prophet said, I am ridiculed all day long. Everyone mocks me. The scholars of religion, the Pharisees and rabbis, the preachers and priests were the greatest enemies of the messengers of God. As Jesus ﷺ said, but woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you shut the kingdom of heaven in people's faces. For you neither enter yourselves nor allow those who would enter to go in. And when the Arabs mocked Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, never comes a messenger to them, but they ridicule him. And no.
Alright, well, they're all wearing black beanies, all the men. Apparently that's their thing, black beanies. He seems to be taking himself really seriously. His YouTube channel is called The Mahdi Has Appeared, is his YouTube channel. Which I'm gonna subscribe to.
Yeah. Look, if you're in that world, I do think that you should listen to him. He's got very interesting exegesis of scripture, and he's got very interesting stories from Shia tradition. I mean, he's just like another imam or preacher, if you ask me. That's just how I see him. He's very calm in the way he sits down, and very calculated in the way he explains himself, and so on and so forth. But if you're outside, like for me, I'm not in that thing anymore. I'm not really in the Abrahamic faith anymore. I'm just watching, and I'm like, okay, well, let's see who's back. Because this to me, this is all political. Like at the end of the day, the Mahdi, the Messiah, these are all political figures who are supposed to come in and usher in some kind of golden age, and people are supposed to rule over us from Jerusalem or wherever they're from. It's politics. So who's financing him? If he succeeds, let's say somehow he was able to get the whole world to believe on him, or most of the world to believe in him, right? In the Abrahamic faith. What's going to happen? People are going to start following him, and they're going to build a new temple, and they're going to destroy the Kaaba, and all these prophecies are going to be fulfilled. And then the golden age comes in, and all of a sudden now we've got 0 point energy, and we've got flying cars, and he's developing his own electric cars. And I won't be surprised if these are the kind of things that he attempts to do, because at the end of the day, this is politics to me. That's all this is. He's a mouthpiece.
Can I play the real Mahdi?
Yeah, sure.
I am Paul Muad'Dib Atreides, Duke of Arrakis. Eluidina Estinani, Melistana Gai, Ruin Dimanaru, Ashidi, Isakandai.
Nice.
Great movie.
None of you can stand before me. You cannot speak. You have to kill me. It's the only way. I'm pointing the way.
Yeah, man. It's very dramatic. But this is the world of most people. Most people are in this world. It's like I don't know how to explain it to you guys. Have you ever been a religious person? Because I was, and then I moved on. It's a very immersive experience. When you're in it, you think it's real. And it is real in some sense, but it's like on a spectrum almost. Like on a how do you say it? Like almost like on a lower level. To them, this is how they see the world. They see Mahdis and Messiahs and gods and spirits. But then when you start maturing, you start seeing what it really is, and you start seeing the politics, and you start seeing it's about leadership, it's about changing the world, it's about building a better world, golden age. It's about perfecting the human being, right? If you study Judaism and they speak about Adam Kadmon, man perfected. It's about perfect and tikkun olam and all these things. You ever studied these concepts before, Sam? Rectifying the world and making the world a better place.
No.
I thought you were Jewish, bruh.
I'm an atheist, bro, which is the most Jewish thing to do in the world.
Anyway, these are just concepts at the end of the day. Just concepts. But that movie was dope, man. The Dune movies, heavy.
I love it.
I enjoyed them. Man. Both movies.
They're literally amazing.
Frank Herbert is very influenced by Islam, and you can tell. But it's like not in a.
You mean the Mahdi and the Jihad? You mean that?
If you read the books, it's just like everywhere.
So, Ben, I know that you're being accused of Afrocentrism and stuff. What's some stuff that makes people accuse you of that you believe?
Not me. I tend to be very historically sound in the information I present. But usually, if you say things like, the Egyptians were black people, and you don't explain which group of black people, because not all black people were Egyptians, and my people were Egyptians. I don't think that Egyptians were Bantus. But if when you say things like that, then people accuse you of being Afrocentric. Or if you say,
I think if you say, like, do you think if you told a person who lived like anywhere in the Middle East or Africa in that time period that like do you think that people today would consider them all?
Maybe by American standards, I suppose. I mean, if Beyonce is considered black, where I'm from, people would think she's mixed race to the way she looks.
I think that the people of most of the pharaohs looked like North Africans today. They look like Copts. They look like vaguely northern African. So I think the Egyptians look like. Now there probably were some kingdoms, like for example the Nubians, I think took over Egypt for some time. There was literally some kingdoms where there were black people ruling Egypt. But I think the majority was just North African looking people.
I think even in like Old Kingdom they like traded Nubia. There was a lot of like I don't know. There's probably a lot of like mixing basically.
Well, they said they came from the south. The king, his name was Menes. Namar, some the Egyptians called him Namar, the Greeks called him Menes. He came from a place called Tinis. And Tinis, if you go look it up, Manetho says that it was in the south. Ta-Nehesi, that was the name of the place. Ta-Nehesi. And it was the Kushite lands. And the first state that was established in Egypt was actually called Ta-Seti, which is the same name that was given to the kingdom of Kush.
You gotta admit they had cool swords then, right? You're a sword man.
So, yeah. Anyway, somebody's saying, where's this conversation going? This might be boring other people who are listening. But, those are the kind of things that would lead people to call people Afrocentrics. Like especially the modern Egyptians. They get very annoyed when you say things. Because obviously the modern Egyptians, they look different from the murals that we see in the 18th dynasty and the 15th dynasty, the Temple of Luxor, and the DNA studies that have been done. The Egyptians were Nilo-Saharan.
The murals represent the ancient Egyptians as kind of brownish, not black, and they have like murals where they present black people, obviously different from their kind of main representation of themselves.
See, they also do things like sometimes they'll paint men and women in slightly different colors. It's not because men and women actually have different skin tones, but the DNA evidence is pretty dispositive. And in fact, the further back you go in time, in terms of ancient DNA sequence, the lower the contribution of detectable sub-Saharan African ancestry. I'm sure they had a small amount back then, but it was like a very small minority.
Yeah, I do doubt the way that the paintings show people's skin colors quite a bit. Because we know there's so much variation in art in terms of like how
them correctly. Like their skin color that they show is basically the same as the Arabs today. Like they're all this like Semito-Hamitic like group or whatever.
Oh, but it's not just the skin color. You can see the hair. Can you see my profile picture right now? This is Amenhotep III. It's clearly an afro. It's like, bro, there's so much evidence that those people were black Africans.
that looks like a head.
it's a fragmented painting. I mean, I can get you others.
Yeah, but doesn't that look more like a headpiece?
You know what? Do me a favor, Sudi. Just go on the internet and type in Ahmose the First. He's the founder of the 18 dynasty. Ahmose the First. Like, you don't need to have a. I can show you the genetic studies as well. They tested the PTR, whatever that means, PTR people. They tested the haplogroups. They tested the mummies. They even found 1,000 mummies at Adaima, Necropolis, and those the dental morphology of those mummies matched tribes in East Africa, so-called sub-Saharan.
I mean, I googled it, so like almost everything I'm seeing has a headpiece.
Yeah, I mean, look at it. It is clearly that's a black African man. That's not even something you need to think twice about.
I'm not even against you saying that.
Yeah, like
The Haplogroups don't match modern day Egyptians at all, and as I said before, the further back you go, the less they resemble them. And I mean, the somatic DNA, while more telling, it's rarer. But I mean, what somatic DNA we have from ancient bodies from 3,000 to 5,000 years ago, like, just is very obviously completely different from any sub-Saharan African population, and is, as we would predict, very similar to ancient Levantine populations, because they're, after all, right next to
well,
They
when
have
the study that
murals that compare ethnic groups. Like, they have murals that are, the paint is still extant, where they're like, okay, let's represent, like the Mediterraneans here, let's represent like the Nubians here, and let's represent us there. And it's like 3 different skin colors on the mural. Like, the Nubians are dark, like the Egyptians are presented in kind of brownish, and the Mediterraneans, like Greeks or whomever they were painting, or some proto-Greeks, are presented as lighter skinned. It's like, okay, like,
Yeah, but the point is that, like, you see all kinds of examples of artwork like that, where the skin colors are, like, the differences are, like, exaggerated. Like, I don't know. I just don't know how much you can trust stuff like that. Like, Mark, were those Levantine?
Mark, the study that you're speaking
Well,
about.
definitely not. Are you sure? Wait, how do we know?
because we have very complete, essentially, samples of somatic DNA, and it really, really closely, the population that it most closely resembles, and is, in fact, almost just indistinguishable from would be modern-day Samaritan peoples, who are, olive-skinned, I guess, but obviously not black.
Yeah, the Levantine.
Could they have formed?
They were not black. They were not black. Except for maybe if you want to talk about the Natufians, there is some debate about who they were, because they have.
Go far enough back, they were.
Yeah, sure. If you start going into like prehistory and stuff like that, that's when you start talking about Natufians and other things. But the study that Mark is speaking to, and I think that he's also referencing, is a study that was done in 2017, where they tried to say that the modern Egyptians have actually gained sub-Saharan African ancestry compared to the ancient Egyptians. Yeah, that's the one you're referencing. And that study has been so routinely attacked by so many scholars. There's Christopher Earhart, even Zahi Hawass has tried to push back against that study alone, because what they did is they tested 155 mummies, but of those 155 mummies, only 4 of them were used as evidence to support those claims. And all 4 of them, I think only 3 of them were from, 3 of them were from Ptolemaic times, when Greeks and Romans were ruling in Egypt. And then 1 of them was from the pre-Ptolemaic period.
So
you can go look up the study, the 2017, it was called the Fayum study. And Fayum was a Greek study. Like, this is the thing about, sorry Mark, I don't want to interrupt you, this argument, we can go, for 10, 15 minutes, I don't want to sound like I'm being combative. It's just, there's a lot of information that people need to understand, talking about who the ancient Egyptians were. So, yeah, go ahead, Mark.
I don't know if we're talking about the same study. This one appears to be from 2018, which is close but not quite 2017. They're definitely using more than just, they're definitely testing more than 3 or 4 samples. I mean, I think it's something like 70. I'll have to open it up and look.
Place the link in the chat. Is it the one from Fayum?
I'm Googling Fayum. I'm not seeing it appear, but maybe it just doesn't appear. in the proper text of the study. Anyway, hold on, give me a second. I'll find out my phone.
Because many studies, there's another study that was done on the leg proportions of the ancient Egyptians. And I'm literally quoting what the study says here. It says that such proportions are termed supernegroid. That's the term that they use to describe these limb proportions. They match the people in Sudan, South Sudan and Sudan today. And then you have the trichology test that they tested the hair samples. And then we have the melanin dosage test that we shake out the Theophil in 1960.
So who are the people that you're referring to who are doing this, whatever studies you're referring to?
So the first one I mentioned here is called Pre-Dynastic Egyptian Stature and Physical Proportions. I'm putting the name of it in the chat now. And it's just, I just read the abstract.
So this is from 1986. I mean, it's probably going to be extremely out of date given the leaps and bounds in archaeogenetics that we've been able to, make in the last 20 years.
I don't think this one is from 1996. It says
the ones from Robbins and Shute.
Yes, Robbins, Shute, Christ College, Cambridge, England. Yeah.
Yeah, that's 1986.
Okay. So do you think they made a mistake or something, or were those?
I mean, I just don't think that like this kind of physical anthropology is remotely as reliable a guide to ancestry as genetics / archaeogenetics. Like